Watertown, Connecticut, David Gravel.
David Gravel here. Hope you guys are enjoying the Chili Bowl and enjoying the week of racing here. Not sure if you guys are flashing green, but on my end, my deal is flashing green. Hopefully it is not for you. But not sure if you looks like maybe it's just on my end, thank God. But yeah, we got Johnny Gibson on tonight. We had an amazing show last night. Hank Davis getting the win. The team out of Massachusetts was upset. A lot of the big, fast guys crashed early, and it was kind of anybody's game. So very cool night for racing. Got to give a shout out to Seymour, Bobby, and Matt Seymour for preparing a good car for Hank Davis. But really excited for Johnny Gibson to come on tonight. I feel like he's a guy that's really knowledgeable about the sport. I feel like if anybody knows the world of Outlaws, it's Johnny Gibson. He's been here nearly since the beginning. So I feel like he's a really good guest to have. We've had nothing but drivers and awesome drivers, but I think Johnny Gibson will give a different perspective. And yeah, looking forward to it. I appreciate the guys that were waiting, 43 people waiting before it started. I'm just going to kind of small talk here until we get some people in here, and then we'll get Johnny rolling and, talk about it. It's perfect timing right now where the heat races are over during the Chili Bowl. And, they got the C mains. Not everybody really likes to watch the C mains. So it'll be a perfect time for us to talk about it. Hopefully we get a lot of viewers. Carter should be posting this on all the social media platforms, and hopefully a bunch of people start joining in because of it. And excited for the show tonight. If you guys got some questions, let me know what you guys want to ask tonight. If there's certain topics you want to talk about, but we'll be talking about obviously the crazy amount of money that is in the sport this year. The competition compared to other years. The $1 million race, definitely looking forward to it. So hopefully, I don't know if we're going to get the numbers we did have in Brad Sweet, Kyle Larson, and Rico Abreu, but during the Chili Bowl, obviously it's tough to get viewers, but hopefully tell your friends, hey, there's nothing going on at the Chili Bowl right now. You could watch this video for free on YouTube Live. So I hope you guys join in and hang out, and we'll get that comment chat going. And if you guys are new to the channel, please subscribe. You just got to exit out of the live chat, click subscribe. And also, if you want to become a subscription member of the channel, you can hit that join button and get some free perks and, get some, percentage off of shopdgr.com. So 2023 plans, I don't know those yet, but yeah, looks like we got 217 in. That's not bad. We don't want to waste Johnny's time too much, but what am I drinking tonight? I'm drinking water. I don't feel the best right now. It's like I got the Chili Bowl flu, but I'm not at the Chili Bowl, so it must just be that time of year. Did Tyler ever drive? Who is Tyler, Gent? Wesley A. Stroll, Gent, Jim, Tom, Joey, Brandon Taylor, Gent, Gary, the Chaz is here, Hillbilly, what's going on? Metcalf Mafia, you've been here a bunch, and I believe you're a bronze or silver member. Appreciate you. Tyler Swank, I don't think he's ever driven. The Chaz is here, of course. He's a big fan. We'll probably, if the conversation wraps up fairly early, I'll probably go on the couch, maybe watch the Chili Bowl, leave you guys on the screen, and give you my feedback live, what's going on at the Chili Bowl. But definitely odd start of those heat races, I feel. I feel like kind of the big-name guys didn't do too hot, so I think it's going to be interesting qualifiers, and it should be a good night. It just seems like this is the most cars tonight, but I don't know if the field's that strong, in my opinion. It seems like there's a couple duds of heat races, but sometimes that happens. Appreciate the visor for the benefit last year. No problem, man. Yeah, if you guys are just joining in, please share the stream. You just hit that little arrow like going sideways, and you can share the stream to any of your social media platforms. Tell your buddies to come in and join, and we'll get Johnny Gibson here in a minute. Please subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. The more thumbs up we get, the better it is for us. And I got to thank Marlowe's Metal Fabrication for sponsoring the channel. They're out of Dover, Pennsylvania. If you ever in PA and need some metal fab, hit them up. You can see that in the top right corner. And then also Moose's LZ Bar and Grill. Man, they've been friends of ours for a long time. Me and Brock Zierfoss raced at Linda's Speedway together, and I love the Moose Burger. It's a burger, bacon, onion rings, and barbecue sauce. They're really, really good. If you ever going to Linda's to watch a race, or Williams Grove or Lincoln, even maybe Port Royal, go check out Moose's LZ. All right, so let's bring Johnny in. He brings plenty of energy and pizzazz, and yeah, let's have a good stream, guys.
The Skagit Speedway track record holder. From Watertown, Connecticut, aboard the Houston Speedway, BillionAuto.com, Jackson Motorplex, High Performance Lubricants, JRC Transportation, number 2, David Gravel. David Gravel.
Johnny, what's going on?
Oh, man, just hanging out in beautiful Yates Center, Kansas for at least another few days or so. I've been here about the last 3.5 weeks. My girlfriend lives here. She's actually able to travel with me most of the race season, but she does have to go into the office once in a while. And the company she works for, Microlight, that sponsors our Last Chance Showdown, she's actually their national sales director. And they're based here in Buffalo, Kansas, a tiny little town about 2 hours south of Kansas City. So I've been here since about the first week in December, and I've been here with the motorhome, but actually took the motorhome to Texas 2 days ago. The motorhome is now at the Prevost Service Center down in Fort Worth, getting some new suspension and brakes and shocks and just, the maintenance stuff that you have to do to have a motorhome on the road. So I'm back here at Melody's place now and coming to you live from, again, beautiful Yates Center, Kansas.
Oh, cool. You're always traveling, even in the off season, but we do a lot of miles. You definitely got to have that coach tuned up, and you upgraded this year. So you got a beautiful one. It seems like now we got a little Prevost community now in the Outlaw Tour.
Yeah, we do. I got back into a Prevost. I had an older Prevost, a 97 XL chassis, and then got away from that, and now had a chance to get back into a Prevost H, an 02 Featherlight. And yeah, between me and Logan Schuhart's got one now. Sheldon has a Prevost. Eloy's got a Prevost. So we got some Prevosts out on the road.
Yeah, that's good. I know they're the most well-built chassis out on the road, and man, the amount of miles.
Dad had one, didn't he, for a little while?
Yeah, he had an older one. I believe it was a late 90s, similar to Logan's older one that he had.
Right.
But it was real nice condition. He just didn't get to use it a lot. Typically, when he comes, he flies in and then flies back home. But it was definitely a nice bus, and obviously, if I ever get one, that'd be the top of my list to get one for sure. I just want to thank you for coming on tonight. Obviously, the Chili Bowl's going on. Do you watch every night, or you don't barely follow it? Or are you a midget fan? How's that work?
I follow it some. Of course, keep the Twitter stream open with Walkopedia. Brian Walker, who's the World of Outlaws NOS Energy Drink Sprint Car Series PR director, does a phenomenal job with all the updates down there. I will probably watch the features on Saturday evening. I watched a little bit. I watched the features the last couple of nights. First of all, let me say this before I go any further. The Chili Bowl is an absolutely amazing event, and the Hahn and Edwards families deserve all the success because of all the years that went into building that into one of the premier events in all of motorsports. Now, having said that, I'm going to sound like the, cranky old man, get off my lawn kind of thing. I actually worked at the Chili Bowl for several years. That was my off-season job before I became a full-time World of Outlaws employee. I was an independent contractor, so I just worked for the World of Outlaws during the race season on a per-race basis. And so from 1997 up until 2006, I spent my winters in Tulsa working for the Chili Bowl. Did a little bit of everything there and never actually announced the race at the building. I was able to call the races for Greg Stevens Motorsport Video. Bobby Gerald and I called it all live to tape for a number of years. But I've worked in the office there at the Chili Bowl. I've worked in the pit area. I've helped move rigs in. Eamon Hahn taught me how to run a water truck and a grader and a tiller. I've worked on the racetrack. I've helped build the racetrack. So I've done a little bit of everything at the Chili Bowl. And just my personal opinion, I liked it better probably 10, 15 years ago. Not quite as many cars, not 6 straight nights of racing, not as many races per night. Maybe I just don't have the attention span necessary for it. But yeah. I also think that maybe, the racers back then were a little more respectful to each other. And I think you had more full-time professional racers there. I think there are a lot of people who look at the Chili Bowl as an opportunity to make a name for themselves, no matter what it takes to do that. And it's a little tough for me to watch at times.
There's definitely some rude slide jobs, and that happens anytime, I guess, in dirt racing, but it seems like it happens a lot more at the Chili Bowl. Obviously, there's so many damn cars there, and to me, it's a 8-day event now. You practice on Sunday, and you're racing on Saturday, and you got a travel day before and after. So it's a long week. It's so hard to put a cap on it because you don't want to turn anybody away. But it's definitely a very, very fun event. I enjoy going every year, and I did this year pretty much because of Levi, and I'm just trying to enjoy the off season and be a dad while I can be the best I can, and learn all those obstacles. But yeah, I've been watching every night. Man, a shocker last night. It seemed like anybody that was a player last night, he crashed somehow. And yeah, who knows? The same thing could happen tonight. But it's cool when the underdog, a team out of Massachusetts, actually, that I know very well, won last night. So that was really cool.
Yeah, really cool. And again, I think you and I talked about this one time. I remember giving you a ride from, was it I-94 Speedway in Minnesota to the airport in Minneapolis one night after the race, and I got to chat a little bit right when you first started running full-time with the World of Outlaws, and got to talk to you about how does a guy from Connecticut get into a sprint car, because I remember the first time I ever saw you, your first World of Outlaws race, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you showed up at Williams Grove, maybe National Open weekend, and I saw the rig pull into the backstretch pit, and I'm like, David Gravel, 89G, who's this? And somebody said, oh, that's a URC guy. But you had kind of started to take the step from URC and 360 competition up to 410s, but it's still a little strange that, not many people from New England venture full-time into sprint cars, and I believe that was even before the Scone Series was a thing.
Yeah, so my first ever race with the Outlaws was actually Lebanon Valley.
Okay, yeah.
Lebanon Valley always struggled for cars, and I had my 360 in there, obviously bring a knife to a gunfight, but Lebanon always struggled for a car count. Right. And that was my first season. I think it was 07, I believe. We had a white car, Eagle chassis. We parked next to Donnie Schatz, and I actually didn't get lapped the whole race, but I crashed on the last lap and didn't finish. So that was a big bummer. But yeah, then we started racing Williams Grove a decent amount. But after that season with URC, we showed up down into Volusia with the 89G and kind of embarrassed ourselves. But, we had to start somewhere. And yeah, it's been a cool ride. And it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do what we did. We did a lot of traveling from Connecticut to Pennsylvania every week. But I'm happy the route we took. I think sprint car racing is definitely a fun form of racing. I think some of the most pure racing that we still have in America. And obviously, when you make it to the World of Outlaw level and you could drive for car owners, you can make a good living for yourself. So I have no regrets, that's for sure. It was definitely not the easiest path, but anything easy typically isn't as rewarding.
Are you surprised that maybe more open wheel drivers, say sprint car drivers, don't try that route, they say from the New England area? Because I know at one point, and I'm not even sure they're still around, but I know like Whip City had a really strong micro program at one time. And there were some, there was an opportunity to get into that entry level there in that area.
Yeah, so I raced Whip City. That was my first track I raced a micro sprint at and raced there for a year and a half, and it closed down. But, to me, asphalt SK modified makes the most sense in the Northeast. And I think big block modifieds, I think they're not too far away. That's not a bad route to go as well. But, that kind of pins you to the Northeast of the country.
Don't mean to interrupt, but as a driver who makes a living behind the wheel of a race car, do big block modifieds or SK modifieds give you that opportunity to maybe race full time, or is it something that, sprint car racing was a more viable option there?
Yeah, we never really liked the type of racing that Connecticut had on the pavement modified bump and run type of thing, and had to move guys. And, we just like dirt racing. I didn't really know what sprint car racing was until probably about 2004. Realistically, we didn't grow up around it. And we saw it for the first time at Lincoln Speedway and fell in love. And I was like, man, this is what we want to do. So we learned a lot in a short amount of time. But yeah, I don't think you could really race for a living racing a modified in the Northeast on asphalt. Now, as far as dirt, I would say there's maybe 3 or 4 guys that maybe do it for a living. But other than that, I would say most guys are hobby racers, or they still work a regular job. So for sure, choosing the sprint car route was the best opportunity for me to make a living. Obviously, not going to IndyCar or NASCAR or something like that. So it's been very fun, and it's been a good ride so far.
Well, you talked about it earlier. Of course, if you're making a living driving a sprint car, 2023 is going to be an opportunity for unprecedented income.
Yeah, that was one of my topics I've written down here. So I'm going to say 2023 is going to be the richest year in sprint car racing history. I don't see how it's not, with, just saying Huset's is the tied for the highest paying sprint car race ever. And then you have the Eldora Million on top of that. I mean, it's definitely an extremely exciting time. We got the Gold Cup coming back stronger. I hear Skagit's going to be doing good things. The National Open's been paying more. What we got going on at Eldora, and then obviously Jackson pays well, and Knoxville as well. So, I mean, I'm sure you probably don't, or you can't say yet because of rainouts and stuff, but right, would you agree? Probably the richest year.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt. I mean, just $1 million to win sprint car race just automatically puts it in that category.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. I mean, winning an outlaw race is definitely cool, and winning your first World of Outlaw race is very, very special. But now when you talk about you have a chance to win $1 million in one night is absolutely crazy. And I feel like that's what athletes or drivers or whatever you want to say, right? That's what you live for, to the highest stakes. Who's willing to risk it all? Who's willing to go farther? And it's going to be very, very exciting. Obviously, the late models had that last year, and there was definitely jealousy, I feel like, on the sprint car side that the late models got the race for $1 million in one night. And I know it's only one night and $1 million, but I feel like it's groundbreaking for our sport and the future of it. Obviously, all this streaming stuff, and there's new avenues and horizons in sprint car racing today. And it's just exciting because, I mean, there might be another $1 million race one day. If Todd has gone from no big events to a 50,000 at Huset's in 1 year, and then now a 250 the following season, I mean, those trends are pretty crazy. And Eldora always steps it up, and they did this $1 million, but Knoxville isn't going to let anybody push them over as well. So I feel like Knoxville will always have an amazing purse as well. So it might be a battle every year who pays the most money.
Yeah, and as somebody who's been around sprint car racing as a fan since the early 1980s and as an announcer since 1997, I have to say that we are in such a great position and so very fortunate at this stage in 2023 in sprint car racing to have people like Todd Quiring and Tony Stewart and the people that are involved in racing and putting up that kind of money. Without them, yes, Knoxville, the fair board there probably has a huge event and probably not affected by any of the other things that go on. But to have people like Todd and Tony and Kevin Rudine out at Skagit and Pete Murphy who have the money to spend and choose to spend it on our sport. I mean, nobody's forcing them to put this kind of money into sprint car racing. They do it out of their love for the sport, and we are very, very fortunate to have that.
Yeah, it's really cool and exciting. Guys like Shane Stewart or Paul McMahon or Darren Pittman that just got out of the sport, they're probably really mad. You see Dale Blaney's coming back this year, so it's just an extremely exciting time, and exciting for me because I feel like I'm kind of in my prime, or maybe just starting my prime, I hope. But we're with a team 3rd year in a row here, so I'm very excited to try to compete for these big wins. And yeah, I mean, what else could you say? It's just a dream come true to be a sprint car driver today because, you think you want to go to NASCAR or race IndyCar, but some of these series don't really make that much money driving for a living. If you make it to the cup level, I believe you could make quite a bit of money. But man, being a sprint car driver here, you're going to be up there with maybe just the elite IndyCar guys or maybe the elite NASCAR guys. But you're going to be able to make a really, really good living.
I know at some point you probably had some aspirations to get to that other level, maybe a NASCAR career or whatever. But and I don't follow NASCAR very much at all, so that's why I'm asking this question. But from what I understand, as a NASCAR driver, the top tier of NASCAR drivers today still aren't making what the top tier made 10, 20 years ago. Guys like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, when they were winning championships, there's not that kind of money available in the sport anymore, as for my understanding. And I was wondering if I'm kind of on the right track with that level of thought.
Yeah, for sure. There was a plethora of sponsorship dollars, and obviously they used to pack the stands at the racetrack. And as you could see, they don't pack the stands at the racetrack anymore. Lots of big sponsors have backed out. So I think there's just less and less sponsorship nowadays and less money to give drivers salaries. I feel like probably their salaries are a lot less today, and they probably race maybe a little bit more off percentage stuff. So yeah, those glory years are definitely gone in NASCAR, but still the top guys are going to get the money. But somebody like Kyle Busch, right, probably gets paid a lot of money. Had a falling out with Joe Gibbs. Now he's at a different team. So not every team could afford to pay the big guys, and kind of similar with any sport, right? Baseball, football, kind of the same aspect.
David, I want to ask you about something that you just mentioned. That you feel like you're in the prime of your career. And we talked about the racing that we see at the Chili Bowl and a lot of young kids coming up trying to make their name. What would David Gravel in the prime of his career tell the David Gravel that showed up at Lebanon Valley with a 360 or, came to Williams Grove from New England week after week or was just starting out traveling, running with the All-Star Sum and starting to get your feet wet on a national level?
Yeah, just when you don't know, right? You just go in blind, and the first season you waste so much time or you learn so many things. You're like, man, why did we do that? And we always got away with racing as a family with the same guys, and no disrespect to them. Like, they did a great job, and we won races all the way up to racing URC. But when you get to that next level of 410 racing, especially on the All-Star and World of Outlaw levels, it's just a different level. People do this for a living, if it's working on the car or driving the car. And it's no joke. So if we maybe got a more experienced crew early on in my career, maybe got my feet wet a little bit more in 410 racing at an earlier time, maybe that would have been better. But just being prepared, having those things ready to go, would have helped my learning curve. But, getting beat by Tim Schaefer and Dale Blaney every week helped me out to be the racer I am today. So I don't regret anything. Anybody would say, right, if you knew what you knew today, 10
Right.
years ago, we would all be rich and set up for the rest of our lives and get to have all our dream jobs and, all those things. So it's one of those things, right? You learn and cut your teeth doing it. You learn the hard way. It makes you appreciate it more. That's for sure.
How long do you think it takes once you start racing at the top level to be able to, as a driver, process all that you've learned and be able to use it all in the cockpit? I know, every night you learn something. I'm sure a lot of drivers go back and watch previous races, but all of that stuff, as much as you want to learn it, it's not something that you have available on recall just right off the bat. It takes a lot of laps, a lot of races to be able to put it all together. I think we see that because you talk about the drivers who are really good at the upper level and good consistently. And it's drivers that aren't really, young guns, so to speak. It's drivers who have been around a little while. Yes, we see guys like Ryan Timms come in and are really quick right off the bat, but that consistency and being able to do it night after night. Am I correct in saying that all of that experience is what gets you to that point of being a top runner on a consistent basis?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you see the guys that can maybe win a lot of races but aren't up there in the points. You know, as an example, I won 18 races in 1 year and I ran third in points, I believe, that year with CJB Motorsports. Man, if I felt like if I won 18 races this year or last year, I would have won the championship for sure. So it just shows you that you can win 18 races and not even be first or second in the points championship. And it just shows you how competitive the top three, I guess you would say, is. And you have about one night a year that you could have a mulligan. If you got more than one night, your chances of winning a championship is very slim, because the top couple guys are going to average a top 5 finish. And, you know, running 24th one night is a huge deficit. So very rare do you see somebody very young competing for a championship with the World of Outlaws. And I think maybe a lot of people are scared of that, and they don't even want to try it until they are very experienced, because it could beat you down really, really bad. So, Johnny, these people could ask questions and
Yep, sure.
put money up. So we got to respect these guys. Rich says, Johnny, congrats on the Sprint Car Hall of Fame. You definitely are the best. David is big game, stepping up its game this year after getting second last year. I'll let you say what you need to say, and I'll finish the second half.
Rich, thank you so very much. I was actually looking through Facebook memories earlier today, and it was a year ago today that they announced my induction into the Sprint Car Hall of Fame, and I'm still just completely overwhelmed by it. Again, it's probably something that sounds a little cliche at this point, and I hope it doesn't sound insincere, because I've said it so many times, but it's still no less true. I am the most fortunate race car fan in the world. I get to see the greatest sprint car drivers night after night, and I get to talk about it. So I'm just very fortunate to be in this position, and I can't believe it's led me into the Hall of Fame. And again, I hope to continue to live up to those expectations that come along with being a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's definitely a cool thing. What is this your first year of eligibility? Is that why you got inducted? Is that the deal?
I honestly don't know. I think it probably would have been my third year if you're going on the age of 50. And I'm not sure what the requirements are for an announcer as opposed to a driver. So I don't know if there's anything different there. I just, I was in total shock when I got the phone call telling me that I'd been elected into the Hall of Fame. I never even knew I was nominated.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Definitely an honor. Hopefully, I make it there one day. But is Big Game Motorsports stepping it up? I mean, we ran second 2 years in a row. We feel like we gave it a really good run this year. I felt like we had no business for a battle in the championship, but went on a run of 7 good races or whatever it was at the end of the year to make it really, really close. And didn't capitalize at Charlotte, but I felt like we kept Brad honest for most of the season. Felt like we had a couple of nights that kind of hurt us. One that I was in control of, and a couple others that I wasn't. So I feel like at the end of the day, we got to win more races. I know we won more than Brad, but I think with a couple mistakes and not winning enough, I think that's kind of what did it. And man, at Charlotte, I don't know what exactly happened, but every time we came off the racetrack, our tires were showing cords and were completely bald, where the previous year we had a good race car there. So things change, and from year to year they change. And, it's one of those things. It's all a learning experience. And we're going to continue to learn this year. Obviously, Hoosier throwing a new tire at us this year, and when that is going to happen. Really, your notebook at that point, you have to enter every race with a new open mind. A single tire change, which both rear tires are going to be different. So that's going to stir the pot. I think anybody that has had a dominant playbook, setup sheet for all these racetracks, once that happens, it's going to be fair game for anybody. You could see, somebody like Spencer Basin and Barry adapt maybe faster, or maybe this new tire might make Donnie's shots better. Maybe he doesn't like the way these tires have been feeling. Maybe you'll be accustomed to me really good. Maybe it'd be good for the aggressive guys. Who knows? So it's going to be very interesting this year with them throwing a new tire at us with all these big races. I think it's literally anybody's ball game this year, and whoever adapts the fastest is going to win the most races.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. And again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Having an experienced crew, having a professional crew chief along with a professional driver. These are things that make the difference when you've got somebody who is really good at figuring things out. There are, David, you and I both know this. There are crew chiefs out there who win races that know a setup or a track or a series of tracks very, very well. But if something goes a little bit wrong, it's difficult for them when they get out of their comfort zone. I think the people who are the top of the game are the people that can adapt to new things, a new car, a new tire, a track change. Again, at the World of Outlaws level, going to different tracks every night and having 3 or 4 hot laps to determine perhaps the most important part of the night, qualifying.
Yeah, you got to adapt. You'll learn to adapt real fast being on the World of Outlaws. And I think that's what makes us so good consistently no matter where we go. We've had a tough go at Port Royal here the last couple of years, but that's a very unique track. And I still feel no matter where else we go, the World of Outlaw guys have a chance to win every single night. And that's just a testament to all the teams. I feel like there's so many professional teams that run the World of Outlaws. We got, 10 guys that could easily win in any night and maybe a couple more than that. But I would say consistently, you could say the top 10 in points probably could win on any given night. So it's definitely an exciting time. So Johnny, I know the Eldora Million race is at Eldora that we race at, and I know you'll be there, but it's a flow racing event. But is there any chance that you could do any sort of announcing or pit reporting? I mean, I know you would probably love to be involved. Is that a possibility or is that a hard no?
I honestly don't know at this point. I would guess it's probably a hard no, but there really has been no discussion about it. I've not been asked by anybody, and nobody has brought it up. Nobody from World of Outlaws has said, hey, if you ever get asked, the answer is no. So I honestly don't know where it's at. And again, to be perfectly honest, I'd kind of like to just sit in the stands and be a race fan for that. I enjoy being a race fan. And I was talking to my girlfriend Melody just a couple of days ago. I said, it's going to actually be sort of nice for me if I'm not on the mic for those 2 nights, because that gives me a little bit of a break, because we have the Brad Doty Classic on Tuesday night. So that was 5 nights in a row on the microphone for me in the middle of summer, and a lot of homework to do in a very short amount of time to be prepared for those races. So honestly, a couple of days off for me to sit in the stands, watch the races, take notes, and add to my notebook for Kings Royal weekend might not be a bad thing at all. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. But I'm not going to be unhappy if I can't be part of it. It would be cool to be part of the only $1 million race in the history of sprint car racing to this point. But again, I'm a really good race fan.
Yeah, I understand. I feel like that sometimes too, where a night off is not always a bad thing. Kind of around Knoxville time, I don't ever run the Front Row Challenge typically, just because it's good to have a night off and kind of relax and recharge the batteries. So, obviously, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it just made me think of something that you mentioned earlier here this evening in our chat about being home and not going to Chili Bowl this year, and being a father and learning that aspect of it, and being around the family. I want to ask you about the mindset of a championship caliber driver, because we know all the championships that Donnie Schatz won, and the fact that he flies in and out to races and gets to go home and maybe not just relax. We know he goes home and works. He helps run the family business, has the car wash there and everything. He's certainly not just going home and sitting around, but being able to be back home with family and have that mental reset. We saw Brad here recently, flying home more or having his family around, that sort of thing. How big a part does that play in the maturation of a driver to championship caliber?
Yeah, we idolize Donnie Schatz's lifestyle. To have his own plane and fly home every week, I think is the absolute dream. But you have to be mentally tough to race the World of Outlaws. There could be stretches of weeks or months where, man, you're just fighting and clawing just to get a top 5 or a top 10. And that makes it tough. And then you're not around your wife, your girlfriend, your fiance, or your parents, depending on what stage of your life you're in. And it becomes really, really hard. And I think you just got to be mentally strong to be able to handle all those things. And you learn kind of what you need or what you like. And some drivers commit to the road and drive every mile in their motorhome and stay out. And some guys fly home. So there's two different ways to do it. To me, I didn't grow up like Sheldon or maybe Shark Racing, and the motorhome thing is more their thing. Where for me, I like to try to go home. My wife has a career at home. So I like to go home, fiddle with my cars, maybe go in the pool and, just recharge when I get to go home. So it's definitely tough. I brought on a lot on myself this year. I drove my t-shirt trailer every single mile this year. Not that nobody else does that, but I drove just as many miles as my crew or you, Johnny, or the World of Outlaw Command Center. And, doing that and also driving the car and hooking the trailer up every night, driving to the next hotel or finding a hotel to stay at. It's definitely a lot of my plate. This year, I hope to take that a little bit of that off my plate, just because sometimes it could get pretty wearing and beat you down a little bit. But it's all for trying to build my brand, build my name. And it's hard to find somebody that wants to come out here and drive my t-shirt trailer around and then be able to pay them and pay somebody to work the t-shirt trailer. So I'm working towards that. It's the World of Outlaw Tour is not for everybody. I mean, you've seen the amount of different crew guys that have been through the sport. They have it the worst. Those guys don't get to go home. They don't typically have the option. So those guys sacrifice the most out of anybody, in my opinion. And it's just it separates the men from the boys. That's for sure.
It really does. And, we talked earlier about the motorhome and how the people have, we have a little kind of a Prevost community going on or whatever. But go back 7 years ago to when I got my first motorhome. That was a huge part of a revitalization for me. I did 18 years of hotel rooms every night, and actually 10 years where I didn't have a house or apartment anywhere. I stayed in hotels. Like I said, I worked at the Chili Bowl during the off season. So I was in hotels pretty much all year round. And after 18 years of all the hotels, I got to the point where I wasn't sure I was going to be able to continue doing this, but having the motorhome has made that difference for me. The motorhome for me is your trip home to mess with the cars or get to the pool. To me, it's having home with me everywhere I go, because I live in the motorhome year round. So I have home with me everywhere I go. And even if it's a matter of 15 minutes before opening ceremonies or before hot laps, where I can go back to the motorhome, maybe make a sandwich, change clothes, take a shower if it's been, 100-degree day and I've been out walking through the pits. Just that little bit has made such a difference in my mindset. And I honestly kind of wish I would have done it 15 years earlier.
Yeah, I'm sure. Just if you don't want to drive anywhere that night and you got to go a different track, you could just park her there where you were that night and sleep and get up early in the morning or whatever. I'm sure it definitely helps you guys out for sure. So, Johnny, we have a couple paid questions.
Sure.
This one probably we're going to do the Chaz's. Oh, we'll do this one first, I guess. But Johnny is live night at Dingus during Nationals weekend. Ben says you can rip drums one time for the crowd. What's your song choice? Now, are you more of a drums guy? I thought you were more like a guitar guy.
Well, so back in the mid to late 1980s and early 1990s, before I became a race announcer, I actually played in bands for a living. And I played drums back then. And then when I started traveling with the World of Outlaws, I picked up a guitar and taught myself to play. So it's a little bit of both now. Actually, I played guitar way more now than I play drums. I haven't even sat behind a drum kit for probably 6 or 7 years. But I don't know if I'm at Dingus the night before the races during the Nationals and I'm playing drums, I'll do some Zeppelin. I'll kick out some rock and roll.
As long as you're not doing any singing, hurting that voice for that big week. We can't have you have a screwed up voice for that week. So the Chaz has a good question. Announcers seem to have the sorority of some sorts across the country. How did the loss of Rick of the World of Outlaw late model side impact you, and did you know him at all?
Oh, yeah, I knew Rick very well, because when I first met Rick, he was actually the quote-unquote house announcer at Eldora Speedway. So I worked with Rick quite a bit before he became the World of Outlaws late model announcer. But, it still seems a little bit surreal to especially now at this time of year, getting ready to go to Volusia. knowing that he's not going to be there. I'd get to Volusia, and of course, Rick lived in Daytona Beach, so he'd be around the racetrack. If I got there a couple of weeks before the races, he'd be around during those weeks. The thing that I missed most, Rick was rather famous for his penchant for really, really bad jokes. And I miss getting the early morning phone calls because I'm basically nocturnal. I stay up really late at night. I sleep late during the day. That's just the schedule that works for me, even during race season. So I'm a night owl. I kind of miss the, 8 a.m. wake me up phone calls and see Rick's name on caller ID. And I kind of pick up the phone and half asleep, hello, what do you want? Gib, did you hear the one about? And it would just be one of those bad jokes. And he just finished the punchline and hang up. And that was just like, a way of keeping in touch with me and yet living up to that reputation. And for as annoying as I'd say it was to be woke up with a bad joke, I miss it. I really do. I miss Rick. And, I wish he were going to be working beside me in the booth at Volusia in a few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't pay attention too much to late models until the last 3 or 4 years. And, he was a unique announcer. He had a lot of one-liners or one sayings that you probably have never heard before. And he was a very unique guy. I thought he was very, very talented at what he did, though. I thought he did a really good job at announcing and added some layers to the night. And, he'll obviously be missed. I know the World of Outlaw late models are going to miss him. He's probably irreplaceable, just like you would be. And, it's sad to see him go, but he definitely will not be forgotten. And may he rest in peace. So we got another question here. Rich, Johnny, loved hearing you scream Blake Nemi third quick at Wilmot beating David Gravel. Got that bar set up for DG this year. Wilmot's a unique place. The local guys get to race that unique track, and qualifying is always so different there. Typically, you want to kind of be around the bottom and not drive too aggressive. And Blake had a fast car in qualifying there, that's for sure. But I know when a surprise guy qualifies really good at qualifying, that definitely gets you excited.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is so cool to be a part of those special moments on a microphone, whether it's a local guy out qualifying the Outlaws or maybe a big upset win or calling a driver's first ever World of Outlaws win. Those are always really special moments. And you're right. Wilmot, absolutely unique racetrack. And I remember the first time I went there just as a fan, it was even more strange. David, you never got to see it when it actually had reverse banking. It actually was banked the opposite way in the corners. The first couple of times I went there, I got to see that. What I am really looking forward to in 2023 going to Wilmot, brand new grandstands and a new press box. They've gotten a new set of bleachers. I can't remember if it was from Daytona or Rockingham, a former NASCAR track that they bought some bleachers from. So they're going to have all new grandstands there, a new press box for me. And I'm looking forward to that part of 2023.
Man, I feel like Wisconsin is just as stout as Pennsylvania in the sense of attendance. I feel like every track we go to, Wisconsin, they pack the stands. And if Wilmot's spending money on putting new grandstands and press box, that means they're doing well as a business. So I appreciate them reinvesting in their facility. And, I have a sweet spot for Wilmot, that's for sure.
Yep. And I know some other improvements coming up. You talked about the Wisconsin tracks. Had a chance to talk to Scott Boyd from SLS Promotions and Beaver Dam Raceway this week. They're actually getting a new sound system at Beaver Dam for this coming year. So again, really cool to see racetracks continuing to invest and make improvements for the overall fan experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a real touchy thing, in my opinion, as a driver with facilities and tracks. I feel like us as a World of Outlaws, we're the top echelon of dirt track racing. And I feel like we deserve to go to the top tier tracks. And I think we should support the facilities that do reinvest in the sport and put money into the tracks or pay the big prize money. And I know you can notice, but here in the last couple of years, that's been what we've been doing. I feel like we've kind of weeded out some lesser tracks. There's no disrespect to those lesser tracks, but I feel like
I completely agree with you. I think the top series and the top drivers should be at the top facilities. That's just the way it is. Maybe once in a while, like kind of a throwback thing, like a Major League Baseball game at the Field of Dreams field in Iowa. But for the most part, the top teams play in the top stadiums. That's the same way it should be for World of Outlaws sprint car racing.
I agree. So we have a good question for you, Johnny. You probably can't pick one, but maybe you can. Larry South says, Johnny, what's the most memorable race you ever witnessed?
Oh man, no, there is no way to pick just one. I mean, so many races over the years. I mean, 26 years on the microphone, 27, whatever it is. But I will say this. I believe somewhere down the road, we'll look back at the years, say from 2020 to 2025, 2023 coming up, as maybe the golden age of sprint car racing, because over the last 3 years, not only have we seen great races all across sprint car racing, whether it's World of Outlaws or All Stars or Knoxville Weekly or Pennsylvania or whatever the case may be, but we've seen more of them over the last 3 years than I think we saw over the previous 10. If I go back in my memory and try to pick out, okay, what was the best race I saw in such and such a year? Maybe you can think of one, perhaps two, where you say that's one of the best I've ever seen. In the last 3 years, there have been 6 or 7 at least every year where you can say that might be the best race I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's hard to pick. You just know when it's a great race. I think everybody could agree that when you see an amazing race, it's an amazing race. It's hard to rank them up there. A couple that I think of, just because it was high stakes, obviously Jason Johnson winning against Donnie at the Knoxville Nationals, and then the way Brad Sweet beat Donnie Schatz as well. I thought that was an exciting way to win. But I thought the race at Volusia with me, Sheldon and Brad was an amazing race to start the year off there.
Absolutely.
That was a very good race, but it wasn't as high paying and high stakes. But at the end of the day, I think for that given night, you can't ask for a better race. And I think that's why it's probably impossible to pick one.
Yep, I agree. There's no way you can narrow it down to one. And even if you pick one, we'll sign off, and 30 minutes after we're off the air, I'll come back and say, oh, damn, I forgot about this one.
Yeah, you've been to too many races. There's no way that you could remember them. That's for sure. All right, Johnny, we got a Sir Pig here says for Johnny, what has been your favorite first-time Outlaw winner to call?
Oh, man.
These are tough ones.
I don't know. That there have been so many that are so good. I don't want to disrespect anybody if I pick one, but man, Jacob Allen's first win was really cool for the way that he came into it, because David, you and I both know when he first came out on the road, first of all, that Shark racing as a whole wasn't very well prepared to be racing at a World of Outlaws level, but Jacob Allen had no business racing with the World of Outlaws in that situation. And no disrespect to him, he has become one of the top drivers with the series, but he had almost no 410 experience at all, even on a local level, and to come out with a team that wasn't very experienced. I mean, to see how he has persevered and what a year he had in 2022, a career-defining year. But, his first win, when I think, it's not an exaggeration to say everybody was cheering for him. He had not only his fans, but all the other fans, even the other World of Outlaws drivers. I think that was a kind of a moment where everybody could appreciate what he had gone through to get to that point.
I agree. And I think it was a year previous or maybe 2 years previous, but he was leading races and broke. I know at Stockton, he broke.
Yep.
And I don't know if he broke at Dodge City in a previous year or what, but I thought there was a couple times where he should have legitimately won the race. And I believe it happened to him twice, and things happened. So that was a cool one. I feel like for you, the coolest ones have to be the first Outlaw wins for guys that had amazing careers. If it's, Kyle Larson, or if it's Tony Stewart, Tony Stewart had one late in his career.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Those are cool. Or the big upset wins. I can remember Jason Statler beating the World of Outlaws at Santa Maria in California. And
who was that other guy? Jacobson?
Travis Jacobson at Skagit, T-Jack, yeah. That's
Yep.
another one. Yeah, things
Yeah.
like that, not only a first career win, but, somebody complete out of left field that you would have said, that guy, he's not going to win a World of Outlaws race.
Yeah, so that's that's another topic that we want to talk about, which we got a couple questions, but we're going to talk about this topic after we get to these questions here. Fast Chat says, Johnny, will the Outlaws return to Vegas dirt track and your favorite track to announce at? So I'll speak on the context a little bit on Vegas. I think we'll be there at some point again. Who knows when, but there's some logistic things that make it really tough to get there. They don't have their own track equipment, but I feel like the community of dirt track racing, if it's the West Coast guys, if it's some late model organizations and the World of Outlaws, I think they got to come together, maybe invest in some equipment so they don't have to rent it every year and they all split the cost so we could have some events at Vegas. I think that was the biggest thing. The cost to have an event at Vegas is a lot because there's no equipment. You got to rent, whatever you need, tillers, water trucks, maybe additional lighting. I don't know, but I think that is part of the context to that.
One of the other things about Las Vegas that makes it really, really difficult to put on an event there, especially at a World of Outlaws level, we raced there when NASCAR was there. We raced during NASCAR week leading up to the NASCAR event, and it was really successful, like the Thursday and Friday night shows there, leading up to when we had a lot of the NASCAR fans in town. But the issue became we couldn't race on a night where there was anything going on at the big track. So if they had qualifying at the big track or a truck race or an Xfinity race, whatever, that we couldn't race because what they do at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, when you're going into the facility for a race at the big track, all the roads around the racetrack are one way leading in. And then when the event is over, they're all one way leading out. Well, what they found at Las Vegas was not only do we attract NASCAR fans when we're there on NASCAR weekend, but there are plenty of people who come just to see the World of Outlaws. And what was happening was there were traffic nightmares with people trying to get to the dirt track just to see the race at the dirt track, trying to get into the facility when people were trying to come out of the big track after qualifying or the, whatever was going on that evening. So at one point, I know the racetrack itself basically dictated that you cannot race at the dirt track on an evening where there's something going on at the big track. So that pushed us further and further to the front of the week where it was more difficult for the fans to come out. A fan who wanted to come out and be part of a World of Outlaws race and a NASCAR race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway would have to be there for 5 days because maybe the World of Outlaws would have to race Tuesday and Wednesday or Wednesday and Thursday, and then the NASCAR stuff on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know if we need NASCAR anymore. I feel like what we had at Lakeside.
I agree with you. I think we could be a standalone event at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. You go back to the early days of racing at Las Vegas, the first few events there, we actually held it in conjunction with the SEMA show. I remember them having big tents set up on the backstretch and buses bringing people from the SEMA show to Las Vegas Motor Speedway, but there was nothing going on at the big track during those events.
Yeah, obviously that's when the banquet was probably in Vegas at the time. Logistically that's terrible now for us and will never happen again. But so when Vegas had the banquet, did you still have National Open in October? So did you guys all go all the way to the East Coast and then all the way back to the West Coast to finish?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So logistically that makes zero sense. So that's probably why that ended.
Well, we raced our way back to Las Vegas, though. We'd go, National Open was maybe not October, but maybe like September 22nd, 23rd, or somewhere in that area.
Okay.
But we'd go back out, and we had a whole month to race back out there because we were in Las Vegas about the same time we finished in Charlotte, usually, early November. So I could remember us going out, even going back to Eldora one time in October. We'd usually hit Devil's Bowl and maybe Southern New Mexico Speedway and Las Cruces. Would go to Manzanita and then go up to Vegas and finish.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Before my time, I heard the Vegas banquets were awesome and people seem to like the end the year at Vegas. Like, how could you not?
Yeah, it was. And it's just, it's one of those things that, like you said, that probably won't happen again. But having a banquet in Las Vegas where, it wasn't so much even the banquet itself, it was all the stuff that went on after the banquet, because there are so many options for entertainment in Las Vegas. You had people, having limos waiting for them outside of the casino once the banquet was done to go to the next place or whatever. It's just pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure. I definitely would like to be a fly in the wall at those after parties. That's for sure. So,
and as far as I need to finish that question they asked about my favorite track to announce that. And I think you have to differentiate that. My favorite racetrack is River City Speedway in Grand Forks, North Dakota. As a race fan, that's my favorite place to see a race. Probably Eldora is my favorite track to work at, as far as how everything is put together in the booth, where how the sound system is able to be accessed for the Dirt Vision broadcast. The scorers are in a different side of the booth, so there's some glass separating you there, so you're not hearing the race control and the scorers coming in the background over the microphones. Just everything about it is really first class. And I will go one step further and say, however, the Salina High Bank Speedway in Oklahoma was the nicest booth I've ever worked in my life. It was actually probably too nice for a racetrack. It was something that you'd see, in a high-end, 4-star hotel, or a really high-end house. The countertops, the finishings, everything was just, it was like being in a really expensive house. You didn't feel like you were in a booth at a dirt track at all.
That's interesting. Is the vantage point good at Eldora in that booth? Is that a really good vantage point?
It is a really good vantage point. Again, one of the things I like about it, that people think that I've always got the greatest view in the house from being in a booth at the top of the front straightaway. Not always the case. It depends on how the place is designed. A lot of places, if you look, the windows have the posts in between the windows. And if you're sitting there and trying to look through that post, it's not really, you don't have a clear view of the entire racetrack. Nice thing about Eldora, the windows are really, really wide. There's no support post in the middle, so I can see the entire track unobstructed from Eldora's booth.
Yeah, where I know, like Knoxville, I've been at the suites up there, and there's a lot of blind spots in the suites. I don't know if it's the same for where you're at, but probably it's the same. Yep. Very cool. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one. We got Travis. Wife and I are driving from Nebraska to Eldora this year for our first time. Any must-do or food must-tries at the track or around the area? Well, around the area, I hope you're not camping there and you got to walk to places, because you're going to be screwed on food around the place. But I think that Eldora does a great job with their food at the racetrack. It's probably the most reasonably priced food that you'll see anywhere in America at a racetrack, and the food's pretty dang good as far as, quick, easy track food. Whittles is the only place that I guess I would recommend down the road. I believe that's what it's. Oh no, the Whistle Stop. I'm sorry.
Stop. Yeah, Whistle Stop. Yep.
The Whistle Stop, I would say, would be the one place you got to go check out. We stay right down the road from there, and there's the normal Chipotle or normal things to eat there. But I would say the Whistle Stop would be the one mainstay place that I know that you would go to eat at. You got any diamonds in a row?
Yeah, no, I've in all my time at Eldora, I've usually been at the racetrack pretty much all day, and so I eat there even now with the motorhome. Like I said, Eldora has great pricing and really good food. My suggestion, if you're coming to Eldora for the first time, get the pizza steak. That's my favorite thing on the menu there at Eldora. But a lot of really good selections on their menu, and a lot of things that are fairly unique to Eldora Speedway that you don't find at a general concession stand at any other racetrack.
For sure. The cheese balls or chicken wings you don't get very often. It's definitely not a bad place to be on a rain delay at, because I'll go and get some chicken wings.
Yeah. As far as must-dos, go take a look at what was going to be the 1 mile Eldora Speedway. David, have you ever had a chance to go down just south of the racetrack, and then you turn back east on that first road there, and off on the left-hand side, there's like a bit of a hillside there where where Earl Baltus had actually started construction on what was going to be a 1 mile Eldora Speedway for Silver Crown cars, things like that, and then decided that it was just too dangerous, a track with the banking of Eldora and a 1 mile configuration. So he abandoned the idea even after having laid it out and actually cut the shape of the racetrack out of the land. And if you can get up there, you can actually still see where the 1 mile Eldora was going to be.
I've seen the aerial shots that you could
Yeah.
still see the 1 mile, but I haven't
Yep.
seen it in person. Maybe I need to go do that. But man, every time we're there at Eldora, we got to be opened up at the t-shirt trailer at 11 or
Yeah.
noon. And
Right.
there's just not a lot of time for me to do any extra things. So we're always fairly busy there. But yeah, Eldora is obviously a great place to race at. Tony's carried the torch really well since Earl left us. And it's, top 5 in anybody's book, I would say. If anybody's a race fan, Eldora's in their top 5, no matter if you're NASCAR, sprint car, midget. I think everybody loves going to Eldora.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got some more. They start rolling here, so bear with me, Johnny. Johnny,
Yep, sure.
as a Western PA guy with lines like "all alone," like the captain of the chess team on prom night, how are you influenced by Mike Lange?
Mike Lang was the
Or
voice of
Lang,
the
okay.
Pittsburgh Penguins. And actually, I knew Mike Lang before I ever became an announcer. Mike is a huge fan of blues music, and I used to go every Monday night to a little hole in the wall called Gene's Blues Bar on the south side of Pittsburgh, just outside the Liberty Tunnels. It was a place where all the musicians in town kind of went and hung out. And it was basically just a big jam session. They had a house band that played there, and then it would just be everybody rotating in and out and a bunch of guys getting to jam together. And Mike Lang, if there was not a hockey game that night, he was at Gene's on Monday night. So I got to know Mike pretty well. And yeah, definitely influenced by Mike Lang with stuff like that. One of the proudest moments of my career, going back to Pittsburgh for Christmas with my family one year, and I actually ran into Mike Lang at a bar on the south side, and he remembered me. He asked me what I was doing now, and I actually told him about becoming a race announcer and doing some broadcasts. And he said, Gibby, I'm proud of you. And that's one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. So yeah, definitely a big Mike Lang influence. And I know a lot of people won't get it, but if you grew up in Western Pennsylvania and were a fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins, he was the longtime television and radio commentator for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And again, a big influence on my career.
Yeah, that's very cool. Did not know that. So Larry South got a question that's probably hard. He asked Johnny, Mount Rushmore of sprint car drivers. I believe Mount Rushmore has 4 faces. So
and I can't do 4. I can give you a 5-person Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
5 from and this. Let me put this in perspective. These are the guys that I got to see race at the peak of their career. I'm not going to go back and get into guys who I never got to see race or never got to see when they were great. I mean, I got to see Jan Opperman a couple of times, but it was with URC after he had his first accident at the fairgrounds in Indy. So my 5 on Mount Rushmore, obviously Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell, Doug Wolfgang, and my other 2 are Donnie Schatz and Mark Kinzer.
Okay, yeah. So Mark Kinzer's a unique guy because, man, he won so many races in a short amount of time. I think you could argue a lot of guys. Like, I would say, like, Mark Kinzer's career is similar to, like, Dave Blaney's and maybe even, like, Bobby Davis Jr. There's these guys that their careers weren't very long, but, man, in the time that they were there, they won some serious races.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mark Kinzer, in my opinion, may be the most underrated sprint car driver in history because of who he drove for. He drove for Carl, and a lot of people would say, well, he was in Carl's car. Anybody could have won in that. David, you know as well as I do, it doesn't matter how good the crew chief is. You're not going to put somebody in the best prepared car and have that car win every night. There's a lot more to it. Yes, the crew chief plays a large part. It is a team effort, but I think Mark Kinzer is vastly underrated for what he was able to accomplish in the sprint car. Look, only a couple World of Outlaws championships, but that's because they didn't chase points very many years. A lot of times, after Knoxville, when the series went west, Mark and Carl would go back home to Indiana. They had the Hoosier Fall Classic at Lawrenceburg that paid big money. They'd go run Port Royal for the Tuscarora 50, catch back up at Williams Grove National Open, that sort of thing. But, when they decided to chase a championship, they basically won it whenever they tried to do it.
Yeah, that's impressive. Definitely respect to them. That iconic Mopar car, that was a great looking car. I think, in my opinion, you're never going to discount Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell, and Donnie Schatz. Doug Wolfgang had a little bit more of a unique career, didn't really commit to many series, but won the most races, I believe, in the history of sprint car racing. And, possibly maybe the most talented guy as far as a driver and a guy that could work on him and set it up. And, I feel like there's a lot of what ifs with Doug Wolfgang. He had a lot of really bad accidents that probably shortened his career up a couple years as well, where, Steve and Sammy raced for so damn long, they're old men, so it's definitely a unique topic, but I think nobody could say that Donnie, Sammy, and Steve aren't on that list. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with you there. I know, to me, what I've been able to see, and I've gotten to see as much of Donnie Schatz as anybody, because he and I started our careers the same year. His first year with the World of Outlaws was my first year as the series announcer. So I've got to see all of his wins and all of his accomplishments. I think the thing that impresses me the most in this day and age, you talked about winning 18 races one year, and if you did that now, you'd expect to win a championship. Seeing guys win 25 or more races like Donnie did for multiple years in this era when sprint car racing, there is such parity and the cars are so equal. I think that is the part that stands out to me the most about what Donnie's been able to do.
Yeah, pretty amazing. What it was like 5 years in a row of 20 or more wins, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, probably might never happen again. And
it would not surprise me if that were the case, that it, at least at a World of Outlaws level, you'll have guys that'll win 20 races in a year, but I don't know that we'll see 20 win seasons with the World of Outlaws at least multiple years in a row. We might get a 20 race winner. I don't think you'll see it happen consistently.
Yeah, I agree for sure. It's was pretty amazing what him and Ricky did, and I'm glad they separated, because that gives me more of a chance to win races. I like Ricky, I like Donnie, but that was a move that I think benefited Brad Sweet, right? Kind of perfect timing in his career. He's peaked in his career and now is a 3-time champion. And if Donnie Schatz was on his game like he was the years previous, that's a hard guy to beat. So
absolutely.
So we got some more. We're going to keep it rolling. Brent says, do lap cars get the shaft, especially on bull rings? Thoughts on giving all lap cars a lap back at cautions? Coming out of the work area and getting put in front of guys that got lapped 2 times is trash. Well, those are strong words, but I think that there's no perfect situation. I know the All-Stars used to put the lap cars in line and didn't put them to the back.
World of Outlaws did that for a number of years too. In fact, I remember talking about being at the Chili Bowl. I remember sitting on top of Brian Carter's trailer when he was actually racing a midget at the Chili Bowl and having the discussion about, do we start to put the lap cars to the tail on World of Outlaws single file restarts? This is before we even did double file restarts. Just the first thought of putting lap cars to the tail. So it's something that the World of Outlaws did for a long, long time. And again, I don't think there is any good way to do it, but I don't think you can give a lap car his lap back. I mean, he has gone a lap down. Yeah, it makes things really difficult, but how often does a driver go on to unlap himself and contend up front anyway?
Yeah, for sure. It could happen. There's small instances where maybe there's a rework of the track and a guy starts in the back, or maybe gets into a wreck, and then halfway through the race, the track opens up and could maybe make a charge, but not to win a race. To maybe a top 10 would be more realistic. But I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I think that it's worse, obviously, for the leader to have all the lap cars go to the back because they earned passing those guys, but also everybody else sacrifices, the fans, the people watching. If the leader laps 8 guys and the second place guy didn't, there's absolutely no chance that there's going to be a race for the lead, and that's not entertaining. At the end of the day, we are entertainment, and it's got to be exciting. So I think that it's probably screwed more guys leading over the last 10 years to win races and makes it harder. But then it's given guys a lot more opportunities to win outlaw races that wouldn't have in the old rules.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And just to go back to our Mount Rushmore question and the greatest of all, just think what would have happened if, back in the day when Steve, Sammy, and Doug were dominating, if lap cars had gone to the tail then. I mean, I can't tell you how many times as a kid, caution flag comes out halfway through the race and there's Steve Kinzer and 7 lap cars in second place, and they're coming single file to a cone on the backstretch at that time.
I could only imagine. There's probably a lot of dominating nights for a lot of those guys. So do you guys see the Ford becoming relevant in the championship chase this season? Well, Donnie exited the year on a high note and pretty much dominated Charlotte. Ford's only in one car. To me, it's a very unique situation with Ford. Tony has Ford NASCAR teams, and it's kind of all in-house to Donnie Schatz. So it's kind of a one and done type of thing. So if Donnie Schatz doesn't do it, Ford's not going to win the championship. I don't know if they're trying to make it, relevant in sprint car racing to have Fords back in the sport. It doesn't seem to be that way. It's a unique times with Toyota and Ford, but I mean, I think Donnie obviously has a chance for the championship. Nobody could ever count out Donnie Schatz. So can he do it? Yes. Well, if he does it, is anybody be surprised? No. But he's definitely one of the guys on the list that has a chance.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of been an in-house situation for him. And I think the biggest struggle for Donnie has been getting an engine that he thinks is drivable, because Donnie Schatz, the right foot is absolutely amazing. The throttle control that he has, he wants an engine that can respond to that throttle control. And I think that they've struggled getting there. They've got plenty of horsepower. The Fords can definitely go fast. I think they've struggled getting him something that he's comfortable driving. And I think they made a lot of progress at that point. But David, like you said, it's a really cool time in sprint car racing to have these different engine manufacturers coming in. It's not just a Chevrolet based product anymore. We've got the Toyotas, we've got Ford. It's a really cool time. I don't remember ever having 3 manufacturers as viable options for sprint car teams.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm guessing Toyota's dabbling in it, see if there's enough interest, but obviously they've taken the midget, form of racing by storm. And, either you have a Toyota or an SR11. So, Toyota's got the funds. If they want to put the development into it, that could be possibly the best engine moving forward. But as of now, it seems like the Chevy is the engine that you want, but I would say the Fords are more than capable, and the Toyotas probably need a little bit more work, but it wouldn't be surprising this year if they perform very well.
Yeah, and again, what we've seen Ford and Toyota do, trying to develop an engine program basically from scratch, because the engines that we run in sprint cars aren't like anything you see in a street car. It's not like Toyota and Ford can say, okay, well, here's what we've got for a production engine. We're just going to modify for racing. This is basically a whole new ballgame for them.
Yeah, for sure. Being a dry sump engine, bolting a U-joint into our crankshaft, having no transmission, and having a fuel injection set up, an old school looking Hillborn style injection. Nobody runs those nowadays. Everybody has a transmission. Everybody has some sort of clutch or a dual clutch transmission nowadays. So all those things are different, and how the power delivery is. There's no clutch we could grab to rev the motor up, and it's extremely unique running on methanol with a fuel injection like we do. So it's a one-off piece, that's for sure. And it's taken a lot of smart people to make these products catch up to Chevy, because not that Chevy has anything to do with it, but a Chevy-based sprint car engine has been around a long time and has always had the best aftermarket support in our country. So they've always had an advantage, and they're so fine-tuned. And at the end of the day, there's certain rules. There's certain cubic inches. There's certain intake sizes in the injector. So at the end of the day, you only could pretty much make so much horsepower with the fuel we're running and all those things, and making these things still reliable. So it's definitely cool to see some big time companies. It'd be cool if Toyota and or Ford gets heavily involved, like they've done with Keith Coons and Chad Boat Motorsports. I think it would help boost our sprint car sport as a whole up another level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Again, I think it's just it's a cool time for sprint car racing in general, and the engine package development is just another aspect of that.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, there's some factory teams one day. We get it more like Supercross or something like that. Maybe Chevy gets back in the sport,
Yeah,
and see because
and David, that is a great point, because I know a lot of people look at sprint car racing and say, hey, why aren't you guys racing 50,000 seat stadiums like the Supercross is? And whole different ball game there, because so many of the kids coming to a Supercross race bringing their parents, and their parents are going to go out and buy them the bike that won that night. It's the whole win on Sunday, so on Monday kind of thing. You're not going to go out and buy a sprint car for the most part after going to watch a World of Outlaws race. You're not going to see kids with sprint cars riding around their backyards, or as I did when I was a kid and I had dirt bikes. There was a strip mine basically right behind my house that we used to go ride dirt bikes in. That's a whole different set of circumstances there.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a dirt bike's a lot cheaper than a sprint car. You could start riding a dirt bike at 5 years old, and a lot of kids do. And
Right.
yeah, it's just a lot different ball game. But it's really cool to see them having the factory support from all the manufacturers. And it's a battle. It's no different than NASCAR, right? Like Toyota, the worst way, wants to beat Chevy, and Ford wants to beat them as well. It's an alpha male type of sport. And whoever wants to put the most research and development in their, programs, as you see, Toyota's kind of changed the game and has made other teams and manufacturers step up their game. So it's definitely really cool to see. All right, Joey Carr, Johnny, just a quick answer. Top 3 current 410 crew chiefs.
Oh man. Go to the top 3 World of Outlaws point teams and take those 3 crew chiefs. I mean that's a quick and easy answer for you.
Yeah. I guess that's tough, right? Is Ricky Warner in the conversation at his point of his career? Obviously, has the biggest resume of any current crew chief in the sport. Obviously, you look at big wins. Brad Sweet's won plenty of those. Is Kyle Larson's crew chief? Is he as high as some other people? Right?
Yeah.
There's so many variables.
Yeah, it is. One of the cool things I saw this week was, from Kyle's conversation with you talking about wanting to come back and go for a World of Outlaws championship. And I would be very interested in seeing that, because we all know his talent is absolutely undeniable. One of the greatest generational race car driving talents that I've ever seen. Having said that, he's won and dominated even a lot of World of Outlaws races, but he's never had to run for that championship where, a mistake tonight can be costly down the road. You can go for a win, put yourself in a position to win. And again, the whole win it or wear it mentality, where you don't have to think about, hey, is tonight a good points night? Are we a third place car tonight? And is it better to run third than to run 20th while trying to get from third to second? So I would be very interested to see that. I'm certainly not going to say that he couldn't or wouldn't win a championship, but I think it was something that would be incredibly interesting to watch unfold.
Yeah, for sure. I would safe to say he'd probably win the most races in a season out of all the drivers, but also I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he didn't win the championship. Who knows? Maybe he would dominate, or maybe it'd surprise you and maybe he wouldn't finish where you think he would, but no doubt he's going to win races, especially with the team that they have, the equipment they have, and his talent. He's definitely going to win. I would like to see it, and obviously it sounds like it's going to happen one day. So when that time comes, hopefully I'm prepared and I get to duke it out with them. Sprintcars only. They have a good social media deal going on right now. And are you planning on going to Australia anytime soon, Johnny?
Yeah, I would love to get back to Australia. I really, really would. In fact, I thought maybe I'd be back for the Classic this year, but things just didn't work out right. But I love Australia. I love going there. I love the racing there. I love the people. I love everything about it. one of the things that actually kept me away this year, you're talking about being here at my girlfriend's place. She actually has a conference for work the weekend of the Classic, and I would love to take her to Australia for the first time because she's never been, and she is as much, if not more, of a sprint car fan than I am. I mean, she'll suggest going to races on nights that we're not racing, and that's just one of the things I love about her. But the fact that she's never been, so I'd love to be able to take her over and maybe do 2 or 3 weeks and do the whole thing. Go from Adelaide over to Melbourne and up the coast through Sydney and up to Brisbane again. Just stuff that I've had the good fortune to be able to do. I'd like to be able to share that with her.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely like to take Jill and Levi one day. I've been there 3 times, 3 separate years, and always had a great time. And one day I look forward to doing that and making it like a vacation, go for more than just a Classic week, or maybe go for a few weeks and make a real fun time out of it. But they're always so welcoming, very nice people out there. And yeah.
Isn't it amazing? How many times have you met somebody in Australia and within an hour of knowing them, like, hey, mate, next time you come back, if you need a place to stay, here's my place, here's my phone number, stay with us. I mean, it seems like it happens without fail to me.
Yeah, it seems like Australians are very laid back. They like to have fun and just very generous people. They don't have too many cares in the world. The people I drove for, they would just give you spending money or make sure you don't pay for anything when you're there, and they just treated you like royalty, and it was really cool to see, and it's definitely refreshing. So Brandon says, David, thoughts on iRacing? Saw you on there once. So obviously when COVID happened, I didn't have a job because there's no racing going on. So iRacing was a way obviously to stay sharp, but also we had the World of Outlaw events. I was on TV with, I think, Fox it was, and we did
Fox Sports 1. Yep.
Yeah, Fox Sports 1. We had a couple like celebrity races, and I got to run like an IROC style race on an asphalt track. And it was one of those things. I felt like as a driver, you got to keep in front of the public eye, and you got to stay sharp. And I think iRacing is the best racing game out there that you could play. It's the most realistic. There's never going to be anything to replace the real thing, but this is by far the best product ever produced. And obviously with technology, that's expected. But what a great game, a great way to go to all these tracks. And, it's not just the top named tracks in the country. There's Stafford Speedway in Connecticut, and Waterford in Connecticut, and Lime Rock, the road course. Like, none of these tracks, if you live on the West Coast, you probably never heard of. Like, so there's so many tracks to choose from, and now dirt's in there, and we're adding more and more dirt tracks every year. So it's an awesome game.
David, I want to ask you from a driver's perspective, iRacing, is it a tool that you can use, number one, to stay sharp and keep the reflexes up, and number two, say you're going to a track that you've never raced before, but it is on iRacing. Can you learn anything from making laps there on iRacing that cross over into real life?
Yeah, I think that second part of your question or statement is what's the most beneficial. If you've never been at a track or you haven't been at a track in a long time, it's just the visual of, all right, how wide's the track? How's the shape? How should you take the entrance to the corner? Like somewhere like Weedsport, somewhere that's so freaking unique and weird and goofy of a corner in 1 and 2 that you're not prepared to tackle that and only have 3 hot laps and then go out to qualify and expect to qualify good. The only way to get better at that is practice and being comfortable with that goofy corner. It's just the way it is, and it promotes a lot of unique situations in a sprint car because there's such unique cars. So, I would say just the visual. And at the end of the day, there's no fear in iRacing. There's no feel of speed. There's no real movement or shakes. I know you could get a simulator that moves and stuff like that. And I've been in the Chevy simulator that all the NASCAR guys are in. And that's a multi-million-dollar simulator, and that still doesn't feel real. It's impossible to replicate the real thing. So at the end of the day, there's nothing better than racing in real life. But if you're starting out, never been in these places, it will definitely help you speed up the learning process. All right, we'll keep it rolling. Fast Chat says, what safety item has most affected in outlaw racing? I don't, maybe that's not worded 100% correctly, or maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I would say in sprint car racing, there's been a lot of cause and effect. If something happened to a driver, got hurt, or possibly killed, I feel like that we've had reacted to it. I believe Kevin Gobrick had the drag link thing hit him as a driver. Now we have tethers. Jason Johnson passed away, and now we called them Barry bars. I drove for Barry Jackson at CJB Motorsports, was the first team to put those support bars on the cage around her head. I think the Kevin Swindell incident, when he broke his back, the biggest thing and the best thing for sprint car racing was the seat inserts. Just think of it like putting a Tempur-Pedic a couple inches under your butt and maybe doing that on the pavement with no padding, and then having a couple inches of Tempur-Pedic foam underneath there. That's going to soften the blow. Or even as simple as carpet. The carpet's not that dense, but say if you jumped and landed on your butt on a tile floor and then you did it on a carpet floor, what the difference feeling that is. I think that's the biggest thing. Sharp Advantage, Dave Sharpley does a great job with those inserts, and so do a lot of people. You could get the inserts from Butler Bill or other seat manufacturers as well. But the full containment seats and the inserts, I think, are the biggest things.
Yeah, I was going to say the seats. I mean, go back to when I first started going to sprint car races. Not even just the non-full containment seats, but before they even had the high back seats, when it was just the edge of the seat was basically right across the base of your spine.
Yeah, Rob Hart told me, he said, we just would get a 55-gallon drum and we'll cut a hole in it, and that's what I would sit on. I know he's exaggerating, but that's probably what it looked like in the race car. It was
definitely
shitty, thin metal. And they didn't know any different, but they had no business driving those cars with those type of seats. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's keep it rolling. I think we have, okay, that's it for questions to be caught up on. Rico won. I'm guessing he won a qualifier. He probably started up front to my knowledge. So if you guys in the comment section could let us know. Taylor Reimer in second in her qualifier. So the girls are doing pretty good this year. I was impressed with both girls last night. Babadijian and Kaylee Bryson last night.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I got two more topics to ask. This is a tough question. You probably get asked a lot, but what is your honest opinion on the competition today in comparison to years past? Do you think somebody like Steve Kinzer or Mark Kinzer would dominate like they did in their time in today's day and age? Do you think that right now is the best sprint car racing has been? Have you seen it equally as good? Where do you think, as far as competition, sprint car racing is at today?
I think I said it before. I think this is absolutely the golden age of sprint car racing. I think it is better now than it has ever been. I think we have more good drivers racing full time on a national level. I think we have the cars are much better and the cars are much more equal. And that's why I don't think Steve Kinzer in his prime in 2023 would dominate like he did in his prime in 1982. And I've talked to Steve about this. I had a chance to do an interview with Steve at Eldora Speedway one time. And he even said, there were times when he was driving a car that was 300 pounds lighter than anybody else's car out there. There was a huge difference. And I think as fans, a lot of us tend to romanticize the past and talk about, how great it was when, Steve was coming from 12th and 16th to win all these nights. And number one, that didn't happen nearly as often as a lot of people think it did. But number two, maybe they were coming from 12th and 16th when there were only 2 or 3 really good cars out there. It was, in my opinion, easier to run from deep in the field when there was a distinct advantage among certain cars than it is today when, everybody is so equal. And the way that I prove that point, go out and look find an old National Speed Sport or something like that from 1982 and go and look at the qualifying results from a World of Outlaws box score. Quickest to say 16th quick. There were some times where it was a second and a half between quick time and 16th quick. Now it's maybe 0.3 of a second some nights.
Yeah, Eldora is a perfect example of that. I mean, say at the King's Royal, 0.2 is probably 20 or 30 positions. I mean, that's where it's like, holy crap! Like, it's amazing.
Todd has to make his appearance.
Yeah, that's of course. Cats love attention. Well, not all cats, but most cats like attention. Ryan Habura asks, "Were you around for Carmen Manzardo against the Outlaws, Johnny?"
I was not. I had not been to Knoxville at that point. I remember reading about it in Open Wheel magazine, but I did not get to see Carmen Manzardo take on the Outlaws at Knoxville. I believe that was 83 or 84, somewhere in there, and I didn't go to Knoxville for the first time until 1990.
Excuse my ignorance, but who is Carmen? Fill me in.
Okay, Carmen Manzardo was a local racer, if I'm not mistaken, Wisconsin or Minnesota, I can't remember. But he showed up at the Knoxville Nationals with what was basically you'd call a super modified. It was just when we're done with this, Google Carmen Manzardo and look for and do a Google image search, and you'll see the car that I'm talking about. I mean, it was pretty much the definition of shitbox, okay? And it's just, this big behemoth of a car that really had no business racing against full-blown sprint cars at Knoxville. And Carmen Manzardo held off Steve Kinzer to win a heat race during the Knoxville Nationals in that car one year and became a bit of a legend and a folk hero for being able to do so.
So he won the Knoxville Nationals?
He won just a heat race,
but
okay. He beat Steve Kinzer in a heat race at Knoxville in, when stuff that you did recently, a perfect night, a 500-point night was pretty much expected from Steve Kinzer when it came to Knoxville on a prelim night.
So it sounds like he is Robert Bell's the modern day Carmen Manzardo.
Yeah, in some ways, I think Carmen was probably more successful on a local level than Robert Bell was, but the reaction would certainly be the same. If Robert Bell won a heat race at the Knoxville Nationals, it would be the same sort of reaction that you saw from Carmen Manzardo at the Knoxville Nationals against Steve Kinzer.
All right, that's interesting. That's interesting. All right, so since you said the Pittsburgh Penguin guy was a some of you looked up to and you learned some stuff from him, where did the white pants on race day come something? What is that from? Is that some old school? Did the flaggers wear white pants, or like where did that come from?
Actually, back in the AAA days, like 1930s, 40s, into the 50s, and even when USAC first took over for AAA, you had to wear white pants in the pits. Drivers, crew members, everybody had to wear white pants. It was a visibility thing. It was a rule. And the way it started, actually, it started off as kind of a joke. I used to wear khakis. I had a polo shirt and khakis, and I had a couple of pairs of very light khakis that, I got some comments saying, oh, what, starting to wear white pants now? Is this a throwback thing? And the thought was, well, these aren't really white pants, but if you want to see white pants, I'll give you white pants. And it just kind of, it's stuck around since then.
Yeah, it's unique. I would say you won't see white pants a lot nowadays. So I figured there's a reason for it. And I figured I'd ask because it's kind of your staple, I feel. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So we're seeing something's going on with Peck in his heat or in his qualifier. He's not doing too well. Looks like T-Mez is doing all right. We're really interested to see how the A main goes tonight. Let's see. Anything else, Johnny, that you would like to talk about?
No, I think it's been fun, man. I appreciate the invitation to come on. And like I told you before, I don't know if anybody is aware of this, but I sent you a text message here recently saying that I think it's really cool what you're doing with these, the YouTube channel and the Facebook Lives and all the stuff that you're doing to build your brand. I think that is a very unique thing that you're doing that not a lot of other guys in sprint car racing are doing, and you're kind of getting a little bit of behind the scenes broadcast experience in some ways, And I think it is really cool, and I congratulate you because I think you're doing a really good job with it.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's just part of being a sprint car driver today. You got to take advantage of the social media world. It's no different than the streaming world, right? You want to be in front of your fans' faces and show people what you're like outside of the race car, not just inside the race car on the racetrack. So it just gives us an opportunity to connect with the people that love our sport and support our sport. Without the fans paying tickets to go to the races, we wouldn't be having World of Outlaw events if nobody showed up. So we need
Exactly.
everybody. We need talented drivers. We need talented people working on the cars. We got to have plenty of sponsorship dollars or wealthy people be involved in the sport. And we need great race fans. We need great racetracks, because if we're missing a couple of those things, it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick before we finish up here, what are your thoughts on playoff start this weekend, NFL playoffs? I know you're a big fantasy guy and a football guy as well, but what do you see happening here in the playoffs? Who goes on the run?
Well, if I was a betting man last night, I was going to bet Buddy Kofoid was going to win last night. So I feel like me and betting on sports is terrible, so I'm not going to bet on anything. But if I was, I mean, I would see the 49ers and the Eagles in the NFC Championship. Is that possible?
I believe so. Yeah.
Are they one? I think they're 1 and 2, or is the Vikings as 2 seed?
I think it's Eagles 49ers. I'm not real sure on the NFC side because I'm an AFC guy as a Steelers guy.
So if I were to bet, I would think it'd be 49ers and Eagles in the NFC Championship, and then the AFC. I think there's 3 teams. I think you got either the Bengals, the Bills, or the Chiefs are my 3 picks. Everybody else kind of seems too inconsistent. You got teams that are just scratching their way in. But who knows? It's the NFL. Anything could happen, that's for sure.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to go out. I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Again, I'm a Steelers fan, and obviously they missed out. Even though I never thought they'd even be in contention on the final week of the season after the way it started. But Melody, my girlfriend, she's a Chiefs fan, so now it's go Chiefs the rest of the way.
Oh, okay, I see what you did there. It'll be interesting. I think the Chiefs obviously are capable of doing it, but it'll be interesting to see if they get their offense rolling in playoff football. Sometimes the game slows down, and if they could score 35 plus points, I say, yeah, they can win. But if they get held to what is it when the Bucks beat them? I mean, I believe they were making Patrick Mahomes run everywhere, and they sacked him a bunch of times. And no different than when the Broncos won the Super Bowl, right? They just dominated on defense, and the quarterback just had no opportunity to pass the ball. So who knows? That could happen. On one given week, your defense could look like the best defense in all of football, and then the next week you give up 40 points. So I truly don't understand how that happens. But when you game plan for a specific team and you maybe have an extra week to do it, if teams are coming off their first round buys or whatever, it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a fairly wide open season. I think there's a lot of guys that have a chance.
Cool deal, man. Again, thank you for having me on. This has been a blast, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. One more quick thing, and maybe it's not quick, but are you worried about all these racetracks closing in America? We got I-30 closing, I-80 closing, Calistoga closing. There's been close to me, Palm Beach International Raceway, which is a drag strip and a road course closing. Atlanta Dragway, a huge drag strip in America, that closing. California and everything they have with emissions and all these things. I mean, do you see this being a huge problem moving forward? What's your take on it all?
I don't, and I know my opinion is not necessarily the most popular when it comes to this subject, but I'm going to go ahead and voice it anyway. I actually think that there are even more tracks that probably need to close. And here's my reasoning for saying that. We're beyond the point where, weekly racing in a lot of places is a viable option. There are so many other opportunities for entertainment for fans. There's only so much entertainment dollar that can be spread around. I think it's going to become a matter of survival of the fittest. We talked about the facilities that the top tier series should be going to earlier in this conversation. I think the top facilities are going to be the ones that survive, and they're going to be the ones that can draw the general entertainment dollar, not just the race fans, but the people who maybe come once or twice a year or say, hey, you know, I'd like to maybe go to a car race tonight. What is around me? I think those facilities are going to be the ones that survive, because in the increased competition for the entertainment dollar, some of the things that have been industry standard for 100 years just don't fly anymore. You know, barely functioning restrooms, or, you know, wooden bleachers that are half falling apart and dangerous, and just a mentality of not welcoming newcomers. A lot of racetracks, it's just, you know, hey, if you don't understand what's going on out here, we're not going to teach you. This is, you know, for you to figure out. Yep. I think we're not in competition with other races anymore. We're in competition with concerts and football and baseball and all the major sports, or if not the major leagues, you know, at least minor leagues. Like, look, I don't know if you've ever gone to a minor league baseball game, but the entertainment value for the cost and the things that they do, that's the sort of things that we need to do. That's the sort of things that I think the World of Outlaws in particular have done very well over the last couple of years. I know we're going to lose Hannah Rickards this year, and I think Hannah's done a great job of interacting with the fans and with the drivers. We now have Chase Rodman as a pit reporter. All of those things, that building of the brand and the product that we present to the fans is what is necessary, not just at our level, but even on a local level moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. Some tracks maybe shouldn't go away, but there's certain tracks that probably should go away. But it's going to be interesting to see. And I'm very curious if there's a huge future in sprint car racing, say in California. It'd be very interesting to see. You know, I know you get a ticket if you modify your exhaust in your street car out there. So I know there's stricter rules and laws out there. And I don't know if they'll attack the racetracks. A lot are on fairgrounds. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm a fan, and I'm all for running 50 to 60 big events, and just on the weekends, and having 10,000 people at least at each event. That would be the dream. And go to the premier facilities, because we're going way too fast to be risking our safety. And it's already a risky sport as it is. Even if we're at the best facilities and the best equipment, things can still happen. So I just don't think it's worth the risk nowadays. And hopefully we could continue to grow our sport and grow the big facilities. I hope we go back to Texas Motor Speedway one day. Hopefully Brian Carter's listening, and Carlton, that we could go back to Texas Motor Speedway. I think that's a great facility, a place where I think we should go, and hopefully we do. And there's a small list of other ones that we should be as well, but I think we're the best. We need to be at the best facilities. But thank you very much, Johnny. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. You're a great guest. You got a lot of knowledge on the sport, and enjoy the rest of your night. And yeah, we will see you at Volusia.
Sounds good, man. See you.
Yep. Thank you. Well, that's Johnny Gibson, guys. I thought he was a great guest. Obviously, we don't have the viewer count tonight than we normally do, I think, because of the Chili Bowl. It's a tough week. But Rich here says Carmen Marzano raced Wilmot, crashed once, wrecked the front, raised the second car, raced the second car the second week, crashed the rear of that car, cut both cars, and welded them together, and one will mark the third week. One will mark the third week at Wilmot. I'm guessing there's a couple typos there. So I'm guessing he wrecked one, destroyed the front of one, raced another one, wrecked the back of that one, welded the two together, and raced the third week. Hopefully he didn't crash the third week. That would have really sucked. But that's talking about some determination. That's for sure. But guys, hour and 43-minute stream. I think that's a solid number. Obviously, Kyle Larson did 3 hours with us. But if you're still here, please exit out of the chat. Give the video a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. We're gaining a lot of subscribers here lately. We'll continue to do these. And I think we have an opportunity to do an amazing show here coming up with something with people from my beginning of sprint car or my beginning of my racing career. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we could announce that next week. But it'll be really, really cool if we get that done. It'll be a cool mixed bag of drivers, a lot of famous drivers, and maybe not some as famous, but we're looking forward to it. So appreciate you guys. Check out shopdgr.com. We're going to be getting the paint scheme out here very soon, probably in a week or so. And then new merch will come out along with that, and we'll be at Volusia in about 4 weeks. But please subscribe. Please give this video a thumbs up. Check out shopdgr.com. Thank you, Marlowe's Metal Fabrication. Thank you, Moose's LZ Bar and Grill. Great companies in Pennsylvania. Please support them. Probably you won't see me the rest of the week. I got a busy week. But next week, we're going to definitely have a very cool show. I'm going to enjoy the Chili Bowl. I'm a little bit under the weather. So we will see what happens. But thanks for the love, guys. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week for sure. Enjoy the Chili Bowl. Enjoy your weekend. God bless. And I'm out of here. Peace out.
From Watertown, Connecticut, David Gravel.